They say history is written by the winners, but sometimes the winners disappear too. What happened in Scotland in the summer of 1314 has never been fully explained. Not really. Historians give you numbers, tactics, terrain, but numbers don't explain what I'm about to tell you. 20,000 soldiers marched into a valley, confident, armed, unstoppable. Only a fraction walked out, and the man who did that to them had nothing. Absolutely nothing. Imagine losing everything. Not slowly, not gently, all at once. Your country occupied, your people on their knees. Your greatest hero, the one man everyone believed in, captured, tortured, and then publicly destroyed, piece by piece, as a warning. William Wallace, the name that made England nervous, gone. His body displayed across the country like a message. This is what resistance looks like when we are finished with it. Scotland didn't just lose a war, it lost its soul. The nobles bowed, the people wept in silence. The land itself seemed to grieve. It was over. Everyone knew it was over. Everyone except one man. His name was Robert the Bruce. And what makes him so deeply unsettling, so fascinating, is not that he was fearless. It's that he had every reason to be afraid. And he acted anyway. In 1306, he did something no rational man would do. He murdered a rival inside a church. Not on a battlefield, not in the dark, inside a house of God. The Pope threw him out. England put a price on his head. His allies vanished overnight. Any sane man would have run. Robert the Bruce crowned himself King of Scotland with nothing. No land, no army, no blessing from above. Just a title that meant everything to him and nothing to the world. Who does that? What kind of man looks at total destruction and calls it a beginning? For 8 years, he lived like a ghost. He didn't fight England in the open. He haunted them, striking at night, burning his own castles so England couldn't use them as shelter, vanishing into forests before dawn. His brothers were executed, his family imprisoned, his closest men cut down one by one by one. There were nights, and history hints at this quietly, where even Bruce must have sat alone in the cold and the dark and wondered, is any of this real? Does Scotland even remember me? Does God? But he kept going. Not because victory felt close. It didn't. He kept going because stopping was the one thing he could not do. And slowly, like a dead thing refusing to stay dead, Scotland came back to him. Castle by castle, town by town, breath by breath. By 1314, it was almost his again. Almost. One fortress remained, Stirling Castle. And this is where the story stops feeling like history and starts feeling like something else. Stirling wasn't just a castle. It was the heartbeat of Scotland, the stone key to an entire nation. Whoever held Stirling held everything. Bruce's brother had been besieging it for months when a deal was quietly made. If no English army arrived by June 24th, the castle would surrender. Now, think about that. This is a man who spent 8 years avoiding open battle. 8 years of patience, 8 years of shadows, and suddenly, he sends England a formal invitation to come find him? Was that desperation? Or was something else happening? Something calculated, something cold, something that was never meant to look like a trap, until it was too late to escape it. Edward II of England assembled a force so enormous that people who watched it march said it looked like the horizon itself was moving. 20,000 men, 2,500 heavy cavalry, armored, merciless, unstoppable. 3,000 Welsh longbowmen, men who could darken the sky with arrows, men who had broken armies before breakfast. Edward marched north, wearing the smile of a man who believes the story is already finished. He had no idea that he was walking into the last chapter. Because while England marched in daylight, Robert the Bruce worked in silence. He chose a corridor of land between a river and an ancient forest, narrow, tight, suffocating. In that space, 20,000 men were worth no more than 6,000. England's greatest weapon, her overwhelming, crushing mass, useless. Then he went further. He ordered thousands of pits dug across the entire field, hidden, invisible, covered with grass and branches. The ground itself held a secret. And his soldiers were trained in a formation called the Schiltron, men locked together, spears pointing outward in every direction, an unbreakable ring of steel and bone. Every piece placed, every detail considered. Bruce looked at that valley and didn't see a battlefield. He saw a room, and he was about to invite England inside and lock the door. June 23rd, the English arrived, and almost immediately, something happened that felt less like war and more like fate. An English knight, Sir Henry de Bohun, rode ahead of the army, and he saw something that made his blood rush. A single rider, small horse, light armor, carrying only a battle axe. It was Robert the Bruce, the King of Scotland, alone, exposed, just sitting there. De Bohun must have felt it, that electric, terrifying certainty that God had placed a gift in his path. He lowered his lance. He charged. The ground shook, 20,000 English soldiers watching, 6,000 Scots holding their breath, a fully armored champion of England thundering at full speed toward the man who had haunted them for 8 years. And Robert the Bruce rode toward him. Not away, toward. At the very last instant, Bruce moved. A small shift, almost gentle. De Bohun's lance tore through empty air, and in that suspended, impossible half-second, Robert the Bruce rose in his stirrups and brought the axe down. One stroke, helmet, skull, gone. The axe handle shattered from the force of it. Silence. The kind of silence that only lives in the space between the impossible and the moment the world catches up to what just happened. Then the Scots screamed, not just in celebration, in something deeper, in recognition. This man, this hunted, broken, excommunicated man, is our king. That night, English commanders begged Edward to wait, rest, reposition, think. Edward refused. The deadline was dawn. He ordered the attack. And somewhere across the valley, in the cold firelight of the Scottish camp, Robert the Bruce sat quietly, holding the shattered handle of his axe. and waited. He had been waiting for 8 years. One more night was nothing. June 24th, dawn. The English army crossed the river and squeezed into the corridor that Robert the Bruce had built for them. The cavalry charged. They always charged first. They were the hammer of England. They had never met anything they couldn't break. They met the Schiltrons, and they broke themselves. Horses screaming, knights thrown into the mud. The charge that should have ended everything ended itself. The knights behind couldn't stop. They rode straight into the chaos. More horses plunged into the hidden pits, riders pinned beneath tons of steel, too heavy to rise, too confused to understand what the earth had just done to them. The archers pushed forward, but the field was a wall of struggling, dying men. They couldn't fire without killing their own soldiers. Bruce sent 500 cavalry straight at them. The archers broke, ran, disappeared. England's most lethal weapon, silenced. Hour after hour, the trap tightened. Men at the front died. Men at the rear stood helpless. Men in the middle could only listen to the sounds of what was slowly coming for them. The heat pressed down like a physical weight. Armored men collapsed where they stood. The dead piled so deep that soldiers climbed over fallen brothers just to reach the place where they too would fall. The river was behind them. The forest closed in on the sides. There was no way out. Then Bruce made his final move. Fresh reserves, men who hadn't yet struck a single blow, came crashing into the breaking English lines. And on a nearby hill, figures appeared, hundreds of them, moving forward, carrying makeshift banners. They were servants, cooks, old men, women, armed with pitchforks and desperate courage, and absolutely nothing else. But to the men below, broken, bleeding, suffocating in heat and horror, they looked like another army. As if Bruce had been hiding a second force all along. As if even now, even here, there was another layer, another door the trap had been hiding. One voice screamed it. "Treason!" And something broke inside 20,000 men that no sword could have ever reached. Not their bodies, their will. King Edward II was dragged from the battlefield by his own guards. The army collapsed. 20,000 men, running, throwing away armor, weapons, anything heavy. Hundreds plunged into the river behind them and were pulled silently to the bottom by the weight of the steel they had worn so proudly that morning. The Scots pursued without mercy. When the silence finally returned to that valley, more than 4,000 English soldiers were dead. Entire noble families erased. Scotland lost fewer than 500. Sit with that. 6,000 against 20,000. And England lost nearly 10 times more. The terrain helps explain it. The tactics help explain it. But neither of them explains the thing that sits at the very center of this story, like a quiet flame that refuses to go out. A man who lost everything. His country, his family, his standing before God, refused. For 8 years in the cold and the dark and the silence, he kept something alive that the most powerful nation in Europe was trying to kill. And on the morning of June 24th, 1314, he held it up and showed the world what it had become. England tried for 14 more years. They failed. In 1328, they signed the Treaty of Edinburgh. Scotland was free. Everything decided in 2 days, on a narrow strip of muddy ground beside a small river most people in England had never heard of. The mystery of Bannockburn was never really about strategy. It was always about this. What does it take for one person to hold on to something when everything in the world is telling them to let go? Robert the Bruce found the answer. He paid for it in grief, in loss, in years of darkness and doubt and the cold weight of a broken axe handle. But he found it. And when the moment came, he rose in his stirrups and brought the axe down.